so the next speaker will be Dr. Nurul Azmi, my good friend and colleague. He's a clinical specialist at the Department of Psychological Medicine, University Malaya. His main interest is addiction medicine, and he has carried out numerous research projects on addiction medicine. He is also the committee member of our University Malaya Center of Addiction Sciences. Now, he'll be talking about the success story of harm reduction programs in Malaysia. Now, harm reduction, as the name itself implies, is reducing harm. If you can't get rid of the harm, particularly in this case with addiction, you reduce the harm. Now, this is actually a very controversial concept. Now, over the years, we have met a lot of resistance towards implementing harm reduction programs. Now, if you remember in the 80s and 90s, there was a surge of HIV cases in our country, mainly due to intravenous drug use. Now, I'm proud to say that actually our department, I was part of the team that was involved in the first harm reduction program or project in Malaysia. We used methadone to treat these heroin users. And as a result of our project, we showed that these patients could reduce their high-risk behaviors and were able to return back to full functioning. Okay, and as a result of our project, the KKM actually took our results and they implemented their own project. And over the years, we have seen that there's been a reduction in the HIV cases as a result of the harm reduction program. So to speak more about this, I would like to invite Dr. Nurul to take over the screen. Dr. Nurul?
Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to everyone. And also Selamat Hari Raya to those celebrating Hari Raya. And thank you, Prof. Jesjeet, for the kind introduction of me. So, as being previewed by Prof. Jesjeet, today I'm going to talk about a success story of harm reduction in Malaysia. So, this harm reduction is in context of drug use in Malaysia. So before we go to the harm reduction itself, we learned a little bit about the history of drug usage in Malaysia. So actually, the drug usage in Malaysia, it was started back in the 19th century during the British occupation of Malaysia. So during that time, we are still known as Malaya, not Malaysia. So these British people, after they occupy our country, they want to open rubber and paper plantation, and also they want to do a tin mining, which is melombong biji timah. So they brought in the laborer from the China and the Southern India to work in our country during that time. However, these people, this laborer and immigrant, they have a habit of consuming opium, or at that time we call it candu. So when they came to our country, to Malaya at that time, so they brought their habit of consuming opium and candu to Malaya. So that is how the drug being introduced to our country. So this is a photo that I took from the internet. This is not a bazooka, but it looks like a bazooka, but actually it is an apparatus when the immigrant or the laborer use to smoke the candu. So actually there are many types. This is one of the type which is large, and also there are the smaller and many other variety of apparatus to inhale or to consume the candu. So this immigrant, they consume the candu when they have a chit chat with their friend, or when they just want to kill their free time after their works, or some believe that this candu can cure their body ache or any other ailment in their body, such as diarrhea or even the worm infestation in their body. So in year 1910, the British government, they took over the importation, sale and distribution of the opium, and they only licensed all retail shop and imposed a tax to person who bought the drugs. However, the mine owners or the large employers of Chinese labor, they imported the opium themselves and distribute the opium to their employees. So maybe the trend of consuming opium is not controlled during that time. So it was banned after the World War back in the year 1945. However, in the year of 1960s, the trend of abusing drug has changed. Not only limited to older people, but it has spread to the younger people or to the youth, and not only limited to the opium, but to other types of drugs, for example, like heroin, morphine, and other dangerous type of drugs. So this continues until the late year of 1960s, when there was a spread of hippies lifestyles or hippies cultures that was originate from the America, if I'm not mistaken. So these hippie people, they have a unique trend of lifestyle where they practice free sex, and they have a unique style of dressing. So if you remember the film, The Pirate of the Caribbean, I mean the actor, the Jack Sparrow, that is how the hippie people dress up. So they have a habit of consuming drugs, mainly the cannabis. So this culture has spread all over the world, including the Malaysia, and has influenced our youth to consume the drugs also. By the year in 1970s, the American soldier who has a war with the Vietnam people. So after the war, they come and transit in the northern parts of our country, especially in Penang. So these American soldiers, they have a habit of consuming morphine and heroin and influence our local youth, especially in the northern parts of our country. Maybe our youth like them as mature people, Western people taking substance, so they easily can influence our youth to take the substance. So by the year 1960s, the drug use among Malaysian youth has risen drastically, become uncontrolled anymore. So the Prime Minister at that time, Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad, he has identified drugs as a national security threat, and he put it as on par with communism. And during that time also, Malaysia has introduced the toughest drug law in the world. One of the country who introduced the toughest drug law in the world, whereby a person who was caught possessed with drug can be executed with the tali gantung. So despite the government's effort, the drugs continue to rise. Initially, the war on drugs appears to be successful. So as shown in this slide, from the year 1983 to 1985, the number of newly detected drug users actually fell from 14,634 to only 6,119. So however, in year 86, 1 year after that, the number of newly detected drug users rose to 63,585. And the number continued to increase. And we see here in year 2016, there were a total of 131,841 drug addicts which are registered in Malaysia. So one of the complications of drug user is the spread of the HIV or AIDS. And this is because of the common practice of sharing needles or sharing injecting equipments that contributed to the high concentration of HIV among drug users. So what makes drug addicts inject drugs into their body? So one of the reasons, because of the low purity of the straight heroin, that make injecting drug use common among Malaysia and drug dependents. It means that the drugs that the drug user use are not pure. And they said the heroin that is being sold in Malaysia only contains about 3 to 5% of the drugs. The rest of the substance was bugged with the other things like caffeine because they want to increase the profits. So by injecting drug, it is a method for the drug users to feel high immediately because the drug go into the bloodstream almost immediately. And to make the thing worse, these drug users or drug addicts not only inject the drugs to their body, but they also sharing needles among themselves. They tend to use the needle that has been used. sometimes they steal the needles, or they took the needles that they found from somewhere on the street to inject the needles. So maybe one of the reason for this is the criminalization of the drugs. When we see the drug addict as criminals, so they do not want to be caught. When they want to buy a new needles from the pharmacy, so they just take the needles, or they just share the needle with their friends. So this further can spread the HIV or the AIDS among the drug users during that time. So other than that, maybe they have a low fund. They don't have money to buy a needle, so they share needles among themselves. So the HIV and AIDS prevalence are increasing among drug users who share the contaminated needles. So one of the report from the Lancet is stated that Malaysia have a mega epidemic in HIV among genetic drug users. And another report by the World Health Organization highlighted that more than half of the reported HIV cases in Malaysia were attributed to injecting drug users. And the HIV epidemic in Malaysia escalated quickly. So for the record, the first HIV cases was reported in Malaysia was in the year in 1986. And UNAIDS reported that Malaysia was experiencing the 5th fastest HIV infection rate in the Asia Pacific region during that time. So we go to see what is harm. What is the definition of harm? Harm is simply anything that happens, no matter what causes it, that damage any part of you, your life, or those around you. Harm can be physical, emotional, social, or some would say spiritual. So this is just a definition of harm. So harm reduction realized that abstinence is not practical for everyone. So it means that whatever we do, whatever the law that we implement, so the drug user will still consume the drug. They will still take the drugs, whatever government do. So we cannot stop totally. We cannot make them abstinent from taking the drug. So we might practice the harm reduction, which is an approach that focuses on the prevention of harm associated with drug use rather than the prevention of drug use itself. So these are the principles of harm reductions. We respect the rights of individuals who use drugs, a commitment to evidence-based practice. So harm reduction is evidence-based. It has been practiced in other countries before we implemented it in our country in Malaysia, and has been shown to be very successful. And social justice, and work with people who use drugs. We are working with the drug addicts, and avoid stigma and accepting drug users as they are with respect and non-judgmental. So harm reduction movements against drug use was started in hospital, university, private practice, and NGO since early year 2000s. So one of the reason, first because of the HIV, epidemic of the HIV. And there was a statement from WHO saying that our country who has failed to meet the Millennium Development Goals that was set by the World Health Organization to combat HIV, AIDS, malaria, and other diseases. So this, there are several there are several criteria that was set by the WHO for the Millennium Development Goal. One of these is to combat the HIV and AIDS, which Malaysia has failed to achieve during that times. So the goal said that to reduce the new HIV from 21.7 per 100,000 population year 2000 to 11 per 100,000 population year 2015. So other than that, the Malaysian government also recognized that HIV was not only a public health concern, but also a socio-economic issue. And HIV epidemic had an adverse effect on household labor supply and family income. So in the harm reduction was first introduced, implemented in Malaysia in year 2005, 20 years after the first HIV cases was reported, which just now I mentioned since around 1986. So 20 years after that only, our country implemented the harm reduction. So at the time, we have two initiatives of harm reduction. The first one is medication-assisted therapy, or methadone maintenance therapy, MMT. and Needle Insurance Exchange Program, NSEP. So initially, up to end of year 2010, 10,000 of opiate users are already registered in the National MMT program. But in year 2018, it has spread to the 18,000 registered clients on the MMT program. So what will happen if harm reduction was not implemented? So as we can see from this graph shown in the slide, following the red line, if we do not introduce the harm reduction, let's say in the graph in 2005, the HIV cases will continue to rise, estimated to be around 3,000 cases of HIV in year 2015. So after we introduce the harm reduction program in year 2005, then there is a drop in the estimated HIV case to, I think, below 100,000 as shown in this graph. So the harm reduction in our country is mainly a methadone maintenance therapy and a needle shrink exchange program. And we also maybe also distribute condom to the drug users during that time, together with other standard treatment like antiretroviral treatments, health and medical care, the standard treatment that we give to drug addicts, continue with the counseling, drug rehab, and we give a job placement or supported them for a job. So because of this, there is a very successful, initiative in Malaysia, as stated in the statistic in this slide. Reported HIV cases attributed to IDU has dropped markedly from 79.6% in year 2001, before the harm reduction was introduced, to only 3.4% in 2017, which is a drop of about 76% since the introduction of harm reduction. Other than that, the notification rate of new HIV cases has reduced from 21.7% per 100,000 population in year 2000 to only 10.9 per 100,000 population and in year 2015, which already achieved the MDG target, Millennium Development Goal target by the WHO of only 11 per 100,000 population, but we achieved about 10.9 per 100,000 population. So National Methadone Maintenance Therapy Program, it was started basically in year 2005, in October 2005. These are the National Task Force on Harm Reduction that involved in the harm reduction movement and implemented after harm reduction. We have a Malaysian Ministry of Health, Malaysian AIDS Council, the National Anti-Drug Agency, the Royal Malaysian Police, the Narcotic Department, the prison departments, and the Malaysian Islamic Developmental Departments, and the academician from the university. And the sites for implemented this methadone program, we do it in the government clinics, in our hospital, and some of the GPs, private GPs, they also distribute methadone. So 1 year results are very promising, which is a 90% retention rate in the treatment. So we look at the methadone maintenance therapy. This is how the methadone looks like. It's a red in color in the form of liquid. So advantage of methadone, when we give methadone to the drug addicts who use opioid, which are basically heroin and morphine, so the program can start immediately, even though the drug addict is still using the morphine or heroin, we can start the program immediately, and it can fast coverage within a short period of time, and capable of reducing HIV prevalence within a short period of time, because this methadone it acts on the opioid receptor. It is agonist to the opioid receptor, and it is a longer duration of action as compared to heroin and morphine. So these drug addicts, they only took this methadone once a day, as compared to the heroin, when they need to take several times a day for them to feel high. So they won't inject the drug anymore to their body. So outcomes and benefit of harm reduction, improving quality of life. So as I mentioned just now, that they only take methadone once a day. So they drinks the methadone once a day. So no need to take the methadone anymore of that day. So they can work. So they can function during that day. So can improve the quality of life. So urine positive for opioid decrease, meaning that if the dose of the methadone is adequate, so the person, the addicts won't take the drugs anymore. So the urine become negative. So this is the assessment after the methadone program. So basically they can back to work after 12 months or even lesser than that. So the increase of full-time job from 47.6% to 66.3%. And urine positive for opioid has dropped from 45% to 3%. And also there is a reduction in risk behavior towards HIV infections. So if you are looking at the quality of life, lower involvement in criminal activities, before this maybe they involve in criminal, burglary or stealing people's belonging because they want to support their drug habits. So after they took the methadones, they no longer involved in the criminal activities. And they can function psychologically and positive social functioning and able to hold to more permanent jobs. So they have a better quality of life. And some of the staff in the clinic, they reported that they can see changes or improvement of the drug addicts after we started in after methadone program. So they have a stable job, and later on they come to the clinic by driving a new car, and even they can get married after they took the methadone. So the next one is a needle sharing exchange program. This is by distributing new needles and detergents to the addicts, and also they distribute the condoms. Other than that, they take out the used needle or contaminated needles to avoid it to being circulate among the drug addicts. So these are the kits that we distribute to the drug addicts. In the kits, it contains small needles, maybe 1 cc, 1 of needles, small needles like the insulin needles. And we have alcohol swab and cotton balls in the kits to distribute it to the drug addicts. So this also has proven to be attractive since its inception in year 2006. The number of registered needle sharing exchange program client has increased from 4,357 to over 100,000 in year 2015. And in year 2016, it has a report found that more than 90% of IDUs had used clean needles since their last injection as a result of the needle sharing exchange program. So not only we distribute this kit to the drug addicts, we give counseling to them, we promote them to come for treatment, to the rehab center, and so on. So this graph has showed that the decrease in the reported HIV cases after the harm reduction has been introduced in Malaysia. So we can see at around 2005, there is a drop of the notification rate of the HIV and drop in the HIV IDU cases as shown in the green bar here. So the notification also has, this graph also show the similar result where there is a drop in the notification of the newly diagnosed HIV cases after the introduction of the harm reduction. So the next one, we look at what are the issue and challenges of implementing of harm reduction program in Malaysia. So first we look at the strengths. We have a strong support from the highest political level from the beginning of the harm reduction at that time, from the Prime Minister and from the Minister of Home Affairs and so on. And we have a strong support of religious leader. At one time in our mosque, the Masjid Ar-Rahman is one of the center that we can distribute methadone at that time. MMT program expanding very fast, and we have a diverse range of OST sites other than hospitals. We have health clinics, NGO, AADK, and also even in the prisons, prison, mosque, and so on. The prison MMT started in April 2008, but I think the number of the prison is still very low that distribute the methadone. And strong growing demand OST suggests programs are very attractive. So the weakness of the methadone program, we do not know whether its expansion is fast enough to control the HIV. The dispensing is only can be done by doctors and pharmacists. Maybe the OST are too expensive for many IDUs. OST is a opiate substitution therapy, the methadone. So it is not flexible enough. For example, that a Hajj traveler, people going for Haji, they cannot carry the methadone. And the threats for it is now they are increasing of heroin production in Golden Triangle, which is located in the northern part of Thailand, border with Myanmar. And many of the drug users, they are not only use heroin or morphine, but they are polysubstance. Most of them use benzodiazepine, and some of them use ATS, amphetamine type stimulant, which are still injecting drugs into their body. And other than that, maybe a death of children methadone overdose. This is because some of the methadone client, when they are stable, they are allowed to take away the methadone to their home. Sometimes they keep the methadone in the fridge or in their kitchen, which is easily accessible by their child. So when this child see, maybe thought it is just a syrup, so it drank it and can cause death to the children. So what are some of the myths of the methadone? They say that methadone make addiction in Malaysia to get worse. Some of them say that methadone is another drugs. What's the point that you replace one drug with another drug? This is still a drug. This is still a senior drugs. They say also methadone can kill a lot of addicts. This is because when they overdose with methadone, they can be fatal. So other challenges that the government have to face, some religious organizations in Malaysia condemn harm reduction strategy as a Western liberal idea. They say that harm reduction was seen as expression of acceptance of illicit drug and sex-related practice, and distribution of condoms and syringes was not appropriate for HIV carriers and drug addicts, especially those who were not married, as these harm reduction strategies will promote free sex among such individuals. These are the controversy or the challenges that we are facing, especially during the early part of implementing of the harm reductions. There are some other myths. Harm reduction encourage people to use substance. The research has shown that harm reduction activities do not encourage substance use. In fact, they can encourage people who use substance to start treatment. It is a gateway for the drug addicts to come into the treatment. It is evidence-based, has been proven to be successful from the research and from other countries who has implemented these harm reduction strategies. Increased entry into the substance use disorder treatment. It is a gateway to the treatment for the drug addicts. Harm reduction. Abstinence-based treatment models are not supported in harm reduction. So harm reduction approach often serve as a bridge to the treatment or cessation of drug use. So because when we practice harm reduction, we can continuously give counseling, encourage the drug addicts to come for the treatment. We can give motivational interviewing and so on. So they say also harm reduction drains resources from healthcare and treatment service. So the truth is the harm reduction tools and service are relatively inexpensive and cost effective. It is not very expensive and it is more cost effective compared than if you want to treat the complication, like you want to treat the HIV, hepatitis, and so on. So moving forward, so despite the successful harm reduction, there is a correlation between HIV and drug use. Both problems fell under different jurisdiction, whereby the treating HIV falls under the Ministry of Health, and drug use is still under the subjects to the law, meaning that the taking drugs or consuming drugs are still as we treat as criminals. So the law enforcement activities and public health initiative were sometimes in conflict one another. So officers sometimes harass outraged workers, drug dependents who work at an SEP sites. This is one of the challenges that we are facing when we want to do harm reduction. When the outreach workers come to the site to distribute the kits, the needles kits, sometimes they get harassed, they get caught by the police who still see the drugs as a criminals. So this prevent the drug addicts from come to the site, from change the needles. So this is the challenges that we are facing. So maybe so to overcome this, as a solution, maybe this is just a suggestion. Maybe we can see drugs dependent as a patient instead of criminals, whereby we encourage the drug users to come for treatments, and by referring to by implementing decriminalization as a solution. So decriminalization is not the same as legalization. Decriminalization means that we did not subject the drug users, small drug users, to the law, and instead we encourage them to come to for the treatment. So legalization, meaning that the production and sale remain illegal and subject to the criminal justice, meaning that production, processing, selling the drugs are still legal, but we decriminalize the drug users because now we see them as a patients. So by implementing decriminalization, we reduce the stigma and expanding access for treatment. So they are not scared to come for treatments. They're not scared being caught by the police. So we can reduce the number of inmates in prisons. There are many inmates in the prison right now who has been caught because of using drugs. And if you can treat them, we can encourage them to get works. So we can reduce the number of the inmates in the prison. Can better improve our economy in our country. We can save taxpayer money and reallocate money for better treatments. So with that, I thank you. Thank you for your time. Is there any question?
Thank you, Dr. Nurul, for the very comprehensive and interesting talk. Okay, I see there are several questions here, so we just dive into the questions right away. Okay, the first one by Prof. Chad. A more urgent addiction currently prevalent among our young population is computer addiction. Now, what is the government doing about this addiction in terms of harm reduction?
Okay, so a more urgent addiction currently prevalent amongst our young population in the country is computer addiction. What is the government doing about this addiction in terms of harm reduction? So to answer this question, maybe at the moment, maybe there are some awareness about the computer addiction, the consequences and the complication of the computer addictions. So to be honest, I also not sure what's the next step in the doing about this addiction this moment, because I have not really come across to the program to the study about this computer addiction.
Yeah, I mean, if I just may add, I think a few years back, the government said that it is actually studying the methods used in other countries like Korea and Japan and all that, and trying to see whether they can use the same policies here. I think one of the policies that I know of that's being used in Thailand and Vietnam is actually the shutdown system, where because a lot of this computer or internet addiction is actually with online games. So the providers of these online games are required to make these games not available online on certain time of the day, maybe like at night or something like that. But that's what Dr. Nurul mentioned. So far, nothing has been implemented in Malaysia. So the next question by Prof. Sarah: how do we ensure that methadone is taken? How does it work? And is there any medications that gives a bad reaction if drugs are taken at the same time?
Okay, so how do you ensure that methadone is taken? So when we first start the methadone to the clients or to the drug addicts, they need to come to our center to drink the methadone. So we make sure that they drink the methadone in the clinics or at the dispensing center, and they have to come every day to the center to take the methadone. So when they come to the clinic, we also do a urine test on them. So if they are taking methadone, most probably they won't take opioid anymore, because the methadone has addressed their craving or their withdrawal symptoms. So when they are stable and when they are urine are negative, we allow this client to take back the methadone to be taken at home. So by this, we can more or less make sure that they are taking the methadone. So okay, so
how does it work?
How does it works? Actually, it works at the opioid receptor, similar with the heroin or morphine. So when it sits at the receptor, maybe it can give some euphoric effect, but not as high as heroin or morphine. And when this methadone on the opioid receptor, it can cater with the craving and the withdrawal symptoms by the drug addicts. Yeah.
Okay, just to add on that, because methadone is actually a very long-acting drug, whereas heroin is very short-acting. So if someone who takes heroin, they need to take it like 3-4 times a day. So it's basically a cycle of being high and withdrawals, whereas methadone is very long-acting. So you take methadone, there's hardly any high, and you take it once a day, and there's no withdrawals also, unless you miss it for 2-3 days. So in that way, a patient can go back to functioning, right? And what about drug-drug interaction, the last part?
Is it medication that also when the client take methadone, we give the counseling to the client. We tell about the side effect, about drug interaction to the patient, and we during the induction period, when we start the medication, we monitor all the side effect, everything. We do ECG to the patient to see any complications, any side effect when the patient during the induction periods. So if they are aware that there was no side effects and the ECG are okay, so we continue dispensing the methadone to them.
Okay. Actually, methadone is actually quite a safe drug. I mean, the only concern is if you're taking other drugs that actually prolongs the QT interval, right? Certain antipsychotics and antibiotics. But it's actually quite a safe drug. Okay, well done from Prof. Sarah and Prof. Chan. Yeah, credit to Prof. Adiba, right? Because Prof. Adiba was actually quite instrumental in making sure that the needle exchange program was actually implemented. And how much is methadone cost? Prof. Sarah has asked, and why is government not sponsoring?
The methadone cost, I think, in our hospital UMMC is about 35 ringgit for 300 mils of methadone. Why the government is not sponsoring? I think if the clients go to the government clinics or like the clinic that is run by AADK, they can get the methadone for free.
Okay, and the last one is actually just a statement. So even WHO has not recognized it as a disease entity, right? Addiction. So it's quite sad. Okay, so it's it's quite a lot of questions. So I think that there's a quite very interesting talk. Thank you, Dr. Nurul, once again. And
thank you, Prof.
with that, thank you to all for attending these two talks in this early morning. Right. Thank you and bye.